Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar on the Sabah state election, issues at stake, and voter sentiment. I'm Ariel of the Malaysia program at RSIS. Attention is heating up on this state election. The outcome on Saturday will speak volumes to both the state of Sabah politics today and prospects of support for Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's coalition. We are honored to have with us as speaker today Mr. Hisommudin Bakar. He has provided an overview of the election landscape at our curtain raiser webinar on Sabah in February this year. Today, he will share findings and analysis of his recent surveys in the field. Mr. Hisom is founder and executive director of ILHAM Center, which conducts research on Malaysian politics, electoral behavior, and public opinion. He was educated at Malaysia's top universities, namely University Malaya and University Kebangsaan Malaysia. After Mr. Hisom's presentation, we will have a discussion and address questions from our audience via the Q&A function. This event is recorded and may be made publicly available later. And now we have Mr. Hisom speaking to us from Sabah, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? First,
Yes.
let me express my appreciation to Ms. Ariel for organizing this session and inviting me to share our latest finding and field insights. Thank you, Ariel, for your efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, my presentation today is titled Sabah State Election 2025, the issue at stake and voter sentiment. My session will take maybe approximately 40 minutes, and I want to apologize in advance if I cannot cover every angle of this very complex Sabah state election. Even for us, researchers from Peninsular Malaysia, it's very difficult to understand and the voting behavior or politics in Sabah. Every locality has its own story, has its own identity, and its own political logic. But I will try to unpack the key finding of our study, simplify the complexity, and hopefully by the end of this presentation, all of you have a clearer understanding of the underlying political dynamic shaping Sabah state election 2025. Let's begin with the basic timeline of Sabah state election. The Chief Minister dissolved the State Assembly on 6 October. Nomination day took place on 15 November this month. Early voting happened yesterday on the 25th, and the main polling day is coming up this Saturday, 29th November. This means the entire campaign period is only around 2 weeks, very compressed, very intense, and very demanding for all candidates. There are 73 seats, and any coalition needs 37 seats to form a simple majority. This numerical reality shapes how alliances are formed and how strategies are planned. This year, Sabah state election is shaping up to be one of the most crowded and competitive elections in the country's modern political history. A total of 596 candidates have thrown their name into the ring, a significant surge compared to the number of contestants during state election in 2022. The sheer volume of candidates alone gives us an early indication of how dynamic, open, and contested Sabah political landscape has become. This level of contestation suggests several important points of Sabah political culture. First, it clearly shows that Sabah politics is highly open and competitive, with very low barrier to entry. Almost anyone who believes they carry some form of personal support, whether through community engagement, clan, or kinship ties, NGO involvement or local activism feel that they have a viable path to victory. Second, it demonstrates that many individuals, regardless of whether they belong to political party or are completely independent, believe that they possess their own vote base. This is unique characteristic to Sabah, where personal network often outweigh party structures. Many candidates feel confident that their personal reputation, visibility, and relationship with the local community give them enough traction to contest meaningfully. In summary, the extraordinary numbers of contestants reflect the unique DNA of Sabah politics, a deeply competitive environment shaped by strong personal network, local identities, and political culture that celebrate individual agency over party hierarchy. In this slide, we can see a total of 22 political party participating alongside 74 independent candidates, creating a highly immense and diverse competitive electoral field. When we break down these parties, we find that only 3 of them are national coalition: Pakatan Harapan, Barisan Nasional, and Perikatan Nasional. There are also one political Sarawak-based party, Parti Bumi Kenyalang. You can see Parti Bumi Kenyalang, which is contesting in Sabah, reflecting how the broader Borneo discourse over autonomy and state right has started to spill across state boundaries. However, the overwhelming majority of the contesting parties, 18 out of the 22, are Sabah-based local parties. And this is extremely significant because it shows the extent to which Sabah political ecosystem is dominated by locally rooted organizations rather than national level actors. One particularly interesting aspect of this election is that Parti Warisan, is the only party contesting in all 73 seats entirely on its own, without forming alliances or seat-sharing arrangement with any other party. This strategy is bold, but it is also deliberate. Warisan is banking heavily on its ability to present itself as purely Sabah First movement, unfiltered by peninsular political influence. You can see how the multi-cornered fight in 73 dunes. The minimum is 4 corner fight, and the highest is 14 corner fight in Tulit. These are the statistics of candidate category. You can see the candidate above 50 dominating the participating in this state election. Okay. Let me share the finding of ILHAM Center latest field study conducted specifically for this state election. Over the past 2 weeks, our research team mobilized across the state to capture voter sentiment as accurately and as immediately as possible. To do this, we employ a combination of research approach. First, we carried out on-the-ground structure survey, engaging directly with voters in their respective localities. This allowed us to measure voting preference, issue priorities, and perception of candidate in a systematic and quantifiable manner. Second, we convene focus group discussions across selected zone. This session helped us listen to voters' deeper opinion, frustration, expectation, and hopes, especially those that cannot be captured through survey questionnaires. Third, we conducted in-depth interview with experts particularly academic and political observer from University Malaysia Sabah. Their insight provided essential context and helped us interpret the state political behavior through historical, cultural, and regional lens. So this is our zone category. You can see we divided into 6 zones to deploy our enumerators and do the FGD in state election. I won't go too deeply into this demographic respondent here. This slide simply show the demographic data divided by age group, by ethnic composition, by income categories, by educational background, and so on. It helped demonstrate that the field study sample represents Sabah real voter landscape. I want to concentrate more to the main finding of this research. Now we move into the core of our findings. What actually drive voter behavior in Sabah? And this is where Sabah differs quite significantly from Peninsular Malaysia. Based on our quantitative and qualitative data, one pattern stands out very clearly. In Sabah, the candidate matters more than the party factor. This is fundamentally different from the political culture in many peninsular states, where voters often align themselves with party logos, coalition narrative, or long-standing partisan loyalties. In Sabah, voters repeatedly emphasize that their decision at the ballot box is influenced first and foremost by, number one, is the individual contesting, their personal credibility, and whether they have served the community. Political parties, narrative, and national issue do matter, but they come second. Why does the candidate matter so much for the voters in Sabah? This is rooted in Sabah political DNA. For decades, Sabah voters have relied heavily on personal relationship, clan and family network, local leadership reputation, and direct engagement with the community. In many rural and semi-urban areas, the candidate is seen not just as a politician, but seen as a problem solver, a mediator, a connector to government resources, and someone who can be approached for assistance. This candidate-centric culture has several implications. It fragments the vote because many voters follow personal loyalties. It makes predicting outcome more difficult because swing behaviors differ by locality. It explains why multi-cornered fights are normal in Sabah. Many believe they have a personal base that will carry them. It also means that political parties have to work harder to recruit credible local leaders, to manage factional tensions and accommodate local preference during seat negotiations. In many cases, a weak candidate can damage even a strong party chances. Conversely, a highly respected individual can outperform a large party machinery. This is one of the defining features of Sabah electoral behaviors, and it set the stage for the finding we will see in the next slide, the characteristic Sabah voters look for in a candidate. Building on the previous slide, where we established that Sabah voters prioritize the individual candidate over party branding, let us now look at what specific qualities Sabahan value most in a candidate. Our finding revealed 3 dominant characteristics that emerge at the top of voter preference across all 6 zones. Number one is a candidate who genuinely cares about people welfare. The strongest attribute Sabah voters look for very prihatin candidates, genuine concern for the welfare and struggle of ordinary people. This goes beyond symbolic gestures. Voters want someone who visit village consistently, listen to local problem, provide assistance during emergencies, help with schooling needs or funeral arrangement, and remain approachable and humble. For many communities, especially in rural and interior areas, politics is not abstract, it's very personal. A caring candidate is one who show up when the people needs them. This is deeply rooted in Sabah communal culture. The second most valued trait is performance. The candidate past record is delivering assistance, development, and administrative support. Voters evaluate whether the incumbent or past elected representative kept their promises, whether roads, water supply, or basic amenities improve, whether community programs were implemented, and whether the representative was active beyond election season. In the interior regions, a simple act, such as repairing a small wooden bridge or providing transport during a medical emergency, can earn long-term loyalty from their voters. Sabah voters pay attention to these tangible forms of service. The third major characteristic is visibility, how present a candidate in the community. Voters want representative more attend local events, walk the ground regularly, are seen interacting with villagers, youth, women groups, and community leaders, and demonstrate consistent engagement throughout the year. In Sabah, Turun Padang is not a slogan, but it a compulsory and high expectation from the candidates. A representative who are rarely seen in the constituency risk losing credibility very quickly. This is why incumbency can be double-edged sword. If they have been active, they are rewarded. If they have been absent, they are punished severely in this election. In this slide, we can see the generational differences, what young voters care about. Based on our focus group informant, interestingly, it showed that younger voters are slightly different set of preference compared to the oldest. While they are value service and integrity, they also look for younger or fresh-faced candidate. You can see, young fresh candidate active on social media, attractive appearance is more appreciated from the young voters, and young voters care about. For them, a candidate digital presence, especially on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, visibility become a proxy for connection and transparency. This reflect a broader trend in Malaysia. Youth are increasingly drawn to leaders who communicate effectively in digital space. In this slide, what this mean for the state election? This finding tell us that for a candidate to succeed in Sabah, now we turn to the question of issue, what actually resonate with Sabah voters during this election cycle. While the candidate remain the most decisive factor, the issues shaping the political mood still play an important role in influencing sentiment and guiding voter expectations. From our data, one team stands far above the rest. Sabah rights and state-level autonomy remain the most powerful emotional drivers among voters. This include concern and demand related to Malaysia Agreement 1963, state autonomy and devolution of powers, the 40% revenue entitlement from federal collection, fair distribution of natural resources, and protection of Sabah dignity and political identity. This finding show 77% of respondents agree with campaign message such as Sabah for Sabahan, Sabah First, and Selamatkan Sabah. This shows that sentiment around defending Sabah right is not limited to any one age group, ethnicity, or locality. It cuts across demographic and tap into a shared sense of state pride. But there is an interesting irony. During our focus group discussion, many respondents compared Sabah situation to Sarawak, which they see as a model of strong economic autonomy, strong state identity, and strong local political unity. Sarawak is often admired for being able to negotiate firmly with Putrajaya, but Sabah, in contrast, has a very different political landscape. 18 local parties competing for influence, 74 independent candidates, frequent shifting alliances, and party hopping histories. This level of fragmentation raises an important question. How can Sabah achieve unity and push effectively for state rights if its political actors are fragmented across so many parties and personal networks? Voters are aware of these contradictions. They support the Sabah First message, but many also express frustration that Sabah political fragmentation weaken its ability to negotiate or assert its right at the federal level. Our data also show clear regional variation in how strongly Sabah right issue resonate. For example, in GRS stronghold, particularly in West Coast, these issues tend to have weaker influence. Voters here are most responsive to stability, development continuity, and government performance narrative. Meanwhile, in East Coast and KDM heartland, Sabah right issues are significantly more powerful, shaping emotional narrative and influencing perception of which party is truly fighting for Sabah. Among Chinese majority urban areas, autonomy issue intersect with concern over governance, transparency, and trust. This shows that while Sabah rights are unifying theme, they are not uniform in intensity across the state. The weight of this issue varies depending on local dynamic, historical memory, ethnic composition, and past experience with political leadership. What this means for this state election? The elevation of Sabah right issue tell us several things. Number one is identity politics is becoming more salient, especially as voters compare Sabah progress with Sarawak. Parties that successfully tap into the Sabah First sentiment gain emotional credibility, especially the parties from the local parties, especially STAR, APCO, Warisan. Fragmentation remain a major obstacle in turning this sentiment into coherent political action. National parties struggle to define the Sabah right narrative, which is why local parties dominate this space. Which parties are seen as defending Sabah rights? After understanding how strongly Sabahan feel about state right and autonomy, the next question we examine in our study is which party do voters believe are genuinely fighting for Sabah interests? Our finding reveal a consistent perceptions across the majority of respondents. Two parties are clearly above the rest. GRS and Warisan. Only GRS and Warisan. These two political blocs are most strongly associated with championing Sabah rights, MA63 and the broader Sabah First agenda. While GRS is viewed as a defender of Sabah rights, for GRS, this perception is shaped by several factors. GRS position itself as a Sabah-based coalition that prioritizes local governance and state autonomy. GRS also as the incumbent state government. GRS is seen as having the administrative authority to negotiate with the federal government on issues such as 40% revenue entitlement, MA63 implementation, and state development allocation. Voters also associate GRS with more consistent push for stability, especially after the political turbulence for the past few years. Leaders within GRS have also actively communicated on MA63, creating visibility around their effort, even if progress has been very limited or slow progress. To many voters, GRS represent a form of institutional continuity in safeguarding Sabah right within the framework of Malaysia federal system. Why Warisan is also seen as a strong champion of Sabah interests. For Warisan, the appeal is different but equally powerful. Warisan has built its political identity around the Sabah First narrative since its formation. It positions itself as independent from peninsular coalitions, a message that resonates deeply with Sabahan who value political autonomy. Warisan grassroots messaging consistently highlights state dignity, empowerment of Sabahan, and resistance to external interference in Sabah politics. Shafi'i Abdal's leadership style, particularly his public emphasis on defending Sabah rights and protecting local welfare, reinforce this perception. Why national parties struggle to project the same image? Interestingly, national parties such Pakatan Harapan, BN, and Perikatan Nasional do not score as strongly on this question. This is due to several reasons. Voters perceive national parties as being more focused on federal interests. Their messaging on Sabah rights tend to be less consistent or less visible. Many voters feel national parties have been part of the structural delay surrounding MA63, oil royalties and revenue agreements. Some national coalitions are viewed with skepticism due to historical legacies of party hopping, changing alliances, and perceived neglect of Sabah political priorities. Now, let's turn to an equally important aspect of voter behavior. Where do Sabah voters get their political information? This question matters because the source of information strongly influences how opinions are formed, how narratives spread, and ultimately how voters decide. Our study shows that the information ecosystem in Sabah is undergoing a significant transformation, shaped by geography, weather conditions, generational differences, and the rapid rise of digital platforms. Campaigning during monsoon season is a major constraint right now. First, we must acknowledge the impact of the monsoon season. Throughout the campaign period, Sabah has experienced heavy rainfall almost daily across the state. Strong wind disrupting outdoor events. This weather pattern has had a real and immediate effect on political activities. Because of the rain, large-scale night ceramah, which are usually staple of political campaigns, difficult to organize. Parties are forced to shift even to the morning or early afternoons when weather is more predictable. But this creates another challenge. Young voters rarely attend morning events because of work, studies, or simply because campaign activities do not typically appeal to them in that format. This means physical campaigning becomes limited, forcing parties to rethink their strategies. Traditional campaign method still matter. Despite this disruption, several traditional methods remain effective in Sabah. Distribution of pamphlet and candidate brochures, walkabout in town centers and villages, visit to pasar tani, markets, night market, and public spaces, attendance at community events, religious gathering, and local ceremonies. However, even this traditional method reach only a portion of the electorate. The dominant force is relying on social media as the primary information sources. Our data show that social media is now the single most important source of political information for Sabah voters. 76% of respondents said social media is their main reference point when making political decisions. When we break down the platform, we see three clear leaders. WhatsApp consists 79%, Facebook 73%, and TikTok 63%. Why social media dominates Sabah political spheres? Because geographical spread. Sabah vast and sometimes remote terrain make digital communication far more accessible than physical campaigning. Weather, like I mentioned before, monsoon rain push more voter indoors, increasing screen time and digital engagement. Generational influence. Younger voters drive online narrative that often spill over into family discussion and WhatsApp group. Low cost and high risk. Candidate, even independent, can communicate effectively without needing large budget or formal road of political machinery. Declining influence of traditional media. TV and newspaper are still relevant, but nowhere near as dominant as social media platform right now. One important observation from the ground is that candidates who are not digitally active, especially many independent candidates, are severely disadvantaged. In a crowded race, visibility is everything. Without a social media presence, young voters do not notice the candidates. Campaign message fail to reach broader audience. Misinformation and competing narrative fill the gap. This is especially critical given that Generation Z and younger millennial now make up a significant portion of the Sabah electorate. Now we move on to one of the most anticipated findings in any election study. Who do voters want to be next Chief Minister of Sabah? We asked respondents across all 6 zones. As simple, but this is a question. If the election were held today, who would be your preferred chief minister? The result provide a clear insight into voter sentiment as we head into the final days of the campaign. Haji Gino leads with 29% support. This reflects his incumbency advantage as the current chief minister. The visibility of GRS as the governing coalition, the perception of stability under his leadership, and the administrative continuity that many voters in the West Coast value. Haji also benefit from a strong support base in his own areas, state machinery, visibility, and coalition narrative that emphasize steady government rather than disruption. For many voters, especially in area where everyday development issue take priority, Haji represent continuity and political calm, which can be appealing in fragmented political environment. The second place is Shafi'i Abdal with 19% support. Shafi'i remained a dominant figure in Sabah politics, especially in East Coast, like Sampurna, Lahad Datu, and Tawau. Among younger urban voters right now, and within communities that resonate with Warisan Sabah First narrative. Shafi'i has positioned himself as a strong defender of Sabah rights, a charismatic leader with statewide visibility and someone unafraid to challenge federal influence. His leadership style, direct, assertive, and emotional charge, appeal to voters who desire more aggressive action on MA63, autonomy, and Sabah economic empowerment. A two-block race is between GRS and Warisan only. These numbers reveal an important trend. The chief minister race is essentially a two-block contest between GRS represented by Haji and Warisan represented by Shafi'i. While other parties including Pakatan Harapan, PN, and Perikatan Nasional are contesting widely, they do not command strong support for chief ministership based on current sentiment. Contrasting campaign approach. Warisan campaign is very highly aggressive. Warisan has adopted an extremely aggressive and energetic campaign strategy this round. Shafi'i traveling far beyond his traditional stronghold in Semporna, targeting KDM areas, Keningau, Ranau, Tambunan, penetrating urban seats like Luyang, Likas, Api-Api, and Tanjung Papat, and attempting to disrupt GRS strongholds. Warisan Sabah First messaging pairs with Shafi'i persona charisma is gaining traction urban voters right now. Sympathy among Chinese majority areas and momentum among the youth, especially on social media. In FGD session, many young voters describe Warisan as the alternative with guts. How GRS campaign perceived by the voters? In contrast, GRS has taken more defensive, stability-focused approach. Their strength lies in Hajiji personal popularity, incumbency advantages, government machinery visibility, and strategic messaging around continuity government, state, federal cooperation. JRS appeal to communities prioritizing development project, economy stability, water and infrastructure solution, and predictable governance. This resonates strongly in the West Coast, where voters often value stability over political experimentation. Now, in urban Chinese voters, a significant shift. One of the most notable findings is the growing dissatisfaction toward Pakatan Harapan, particularly among urban voters, Chinese majority constituencies, and middle-class professionals. Several factors contributed to this sentiment. Frustration over perceived delay in MA 63 implementation, concern about governance and transparency, recent controversies such as the Albert Tay case, the resignation of Samsul Iskandar, Anwar political secretary yesterday, this issue create an impression that Pakatan Harapan has weakened its credibility among voters who prioritize clean government and accountability. As a result, many of these voters are shifting towards Warisan. This realignment will have major implications for urban seats like Luyang, Kapayan, Tanjung Papat, Likas, and Api-Api. Let me summarize the key takeaway from our findings. First, state election 2025 is one of the most competitive elections Sabah has ever seen, with nearly 600 candidates and significant fragmentation among local parties. Second, voter behaviors in Sabah is shaped primarily by the candidate, not the party. Personality, visibility, and service track record matter far more than national narrative. Third, issue related to Sabah rights, MA 63, autonomy, and the 40% revenue entitlement continue to the strongest emotional and political drivers among voters. Fourth, social media now dominates political communication. WhatsApp, Facebook, and TikTok are the primary channel influencing voters' decision, especially among younger voters. And finally, the real contest is shaping up between GRS and Warisan, with Hajiji and Shafi'i emerging as the leading choices for Chief Minister. National parties, particularly Pakatan Harapan, are struggling to shape leadership perception this round. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we can see, the Sabah state election is not just state contest, it's essentially a referendum on identity, autonomy, and how Sabah position itself within Malaysia political landscape. The choice voters make this Saturday will determine whether Sabah move toward a stronger, more locally rooted leadership model, or whether federal coalition will continue to shape its direction. What is clear from our ground observation is that Sabahan want leaders who are close to the community, familiar with local struggles, and sincere in championing Sabah right and dignity. With only a few days left before polling, the contest remain open, dynamic and highly dependent on how each block mobilize the undecided voters. On behalf of ILHAM Center, I hope this insight help all of us better understand the undercurrent shaping this state election. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hisom. Um, I would like to put you on the spot and ask you for a sense of would um, how the seats will be apportioned in the end after the election. What is your general sense of who will come out on top?
Sorry, Ariel. Can you
Yeah,
repeat?
yeah. I would like to put you on the spot and ask you to
Yeah.
anticipate which coalition is going to win the election. Is there going to be
Based
somebody?
on our data, GRS now leading because based on our quantitative data, the
Mm,
approval rating for GRS around 28% right now, and
So
for
that would
Warisan
mean how many
around
seats for
20%.
them?
Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. How many seats would that be for them?
So right now, from our data, around 22 to 25 seats.
So
Uh,
that would not be a majority.
yeah, not to be a majority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, you had given us a very, very comprehensive analysis of the ground. So I thought I would ask you some questions and then move to Q&A. First, I am curious about Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's standing.
Yeah.
He was a very prominent figure in earlier elections in Sabah.
Yeah.
I wonder what is the Anwar brand now, and how does that intersect with his relationship with GRS and the issue highlighted by you that Sabah rights and autonomy is key.
Mm.
Thank you.
Interestingly, we find in this our study show the approval rating towards PMX and Madani policy well perceived by the voters in Sabah compared to the
Mm,
Peninsula. The Peninsula approval rating towards Anwar and Madani policy around 53%, but in Sabah we can consist around 68%. Uh, that's for me it's better than Peninsula. But when we go to the in-depth interview, how voters relates and the numbers translate to vote or not. The response is the numbers not translate directly into the vote because the approval rating is just to what we just accept prime minister as the we as a prime minister, our leader, not in the Sabah matters. That's a
mm.
very contrast from the quantitative numbers, but underlying is very different. So the numbers not translate to the votes in 2019.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a very nuanced explanation of where he stands, and I really appreciate that. How about the fall in support for DAP vis-a-vis Warisan? Would you be able to give us a bit more details as to why the Chinese sentiment has fallen off of DAP?
Yeah, when I come at the first round, we doing a survey around July after dissolvement of State Dun. Um, at that time, when I mingle with the Chinese community, they resonate not too critical towards government or PMX, whatever. Still, for me, still accept the factor of Pakatan Harapan factor, but the candidates still ambiguity that time. still not clear who will represent the candidate from the Pakatan Harapan. The Pakatan Harapan for me make a very huge mistake because at the first level you can see Pakatan Harapan lead by Iwan Benedict from APCO Party. He is a chairman of Pakatan Harapan Sabah. At the first place, Iwan Benedict sidelined by Mr. Anwar Ibrahim to negotiate the seat. So, Saifuddin Nasution from Peninsula deal with Hajiji and Masidi. When the sentiment leader from Malaya, the party from Malaya, is become more critical, that's image not very positive towards Pakatan Harapan at that time. So the frustration from the APCO and their leaders make the exit from the Pakatan Harapan coalition. That's why Iwan Benedict quit from the ministerial post, and APCO announced they are quit from the Pakatan Harapan coalition. And then the major problem also in PKR itself, Anwar Ibrahim Party, because in Sabah, PKR after the party election, you can see the fragmentation from the Rafizi side and Nurul Izzah team divided the leaders in this state. You can see around 25 leaders divide into two. So this PKR internal conflict pressure. How come three candidates not from the membership party become a candidates for the party? One is the Marotai seat, the second one is Malalap, and the third one is Sindumin, the son of Musa Aman, Yemeni Hafiz. So the party members question why these three person can be a candidate for the party. So internal conflict in PKR also make a problem in this election. DAP also, because the DAP chairman Frankie Poon from Sandakan not to be listed as candidate, DAP candidate in their constituencies. So the Frankie Poon frustrated and declare quit from the DAP. That's why for me the shaky ground for DAP is real. And when we arrive after nomination day, we can see the vibe of rejection towards DAP and PKR is very high, very high. When we interview the young voters, especially the Chinese voters, the critical comments come very obvious and very radical. So for me, at the final round for Pakatan Harapan, DAP or PKR, for me after the reveal of Albert Tay, the last for me it's bomb, the hit from Albert Tay allegation towards Samsul Iskandar, that's will become a major problem for Pakatan Harapan, especially DAP and PKR, especially the seat in urban area like Sandakan and Kota Kinabalu. Major shift maybe.
You mentioned the importance of social media as a source of information.
Yeah.
Is there a party or a particular candidate that you found to be particularly successful at the social media game?
For me, from my sentiment analysis, our team from data analytic team respond when I ask which party become more successful and uh, their message, their narrative accepted by the most voters in Sabah. Um, surprisingly, the young voters, respond to us not not a single party or candidates have a sexy message to attract their attraction. So, for me, the young voters in age 18 to 20 is very skepticism and they don't receive any campaign is more attractive towards them. So it's still open. This segment is very open for any party and candidates. And I still believe these undecided voters came major from this segment, 18 to 20 years old voters.
Mm. About the role of Musa Aman. He's a very, very long time personality in Sabah politics.
Yeah,
Um, Clearly, his appointment to be governor suggests that he does have a good enough relationship with Prime Minister Anwar and maybe the current state government. Um, he has, I think, like 8 family members who are running in the election. So
yeah.
overall, has there been any attention on him during the election or any expectation of what kind of role he might play after
Um,
election?
from our response to from the FGD groups, we sense that the Musa Aman influence from their sons or their sibling. So for voters, because the locality itself, like Bongawan, you see, like Bongawan, Anifa, his brothers contest in Bongawan. But in that area, Bongawan, you see, Bongawan is a Brunei majority voters, Brunei ethnic, and the Malay ethnic. Kadazan the second from the majority of ethnic. So in that area, the sentiment towards Musa Aman influence his brother Anifa Aman, not a major concern for the voters. And then Yemeni Hafiz in Sindumin, his son, and the younger son in Sungai Manila, Sungai Manila, uh, in Libaran. So, two sons of Musa Aman contest in this election. Also, this territory or this locality not affected by negative comment or what we call when we outsider perceive the influence of Musa Ahmad is very bad for the Sabah, but in that locality not effect at all. That interesting.
Mm,
That interesting.
mm,
So for me, manageable for Musa Aman to manage, but for me, when we met at the Chinese community quite for me quite have a more bright or political literacy is high, es- especially when we ask when you want to protest towards DAP and Pakatan Harapan, so you won't vote for Warisan. You believe Shafi'i Abdul can form the simple majority and become a chief minister as the Musaman TYT right now? And the Chinese community respond, yeah, they don't have any confidence that Shafi'i can manage that situation. So that's very interesting. That's very interesting.
in Indeed, indeed. It seems to be therefore that some of the votes that Warisan is getting is a protest vote,
Yeah,
particularly from the Chinese, because
yeah,
I think
sure.
Chinese voters are very clear as to, you know, what Warisan's chances of being able to get into government, given the history as well.
Yeah,
But yet they are prepared to give their vote to
yeah.
him. Um, I have a question about Perikatan Nasional. There seems to be not much reference to them. Um, they were bigger players in the last state
Yeah.
election, I
Mm.
think. So can you maybe give us an idea of what happened to them and why is it that they have not been able to capitalize on some of the problems that have emerged for the incumbents?
Because Perikatan Nasional have a very big issue within their party, within their party. So, conflict between Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin and his Deputy President Hamzah Zainuddin dragged very long process in their political matters, their party matters. So, uh, after GRS form, when the Hajiji formed GRS, quit from the Perikatan Nasional, Ronald Kennedy do not re-establish the strength of Perikatan Nasional in Sabah. So Ronald Kennedy quite busy with the struggle in party internal conflict compared to prepare the election machinery and so on. So that's why for me Perikatan Nasional moves very late in Sabah election. Uh, so the preparation towards election to choose the right candidate, the best candidate, and Perikatan Nasional contest 42 seat. For me, it's very huge number and beyond their capacity to manage with current
Hmm.
their ability. So for me, Perikatan Nasional from our study at the 6% approval rating is very low because what I said before, internal conflicts do not prepare for the better choice of the candidate. So that's problem for Perikatan Nasional.
Thank you, Mr. Hisam. I think let's go to Q&A with our audience. I would like to bring in Dr. David Han, Research Fellow with the program. David, please.
Okay, there are two questions, right, from the audience, right? So there is one question, right, from Mr. Shafiq Ismail from the Maritime Institute of Malaysia. And he asks, how will the Sabah election affect the upcoming GE16? And the second question comes from Miss Connie Lee Goni, a student from RSIS, right? She's asking, right, is there a high probability of having a hung assembly in this upcoming election? So I'd like to hear your views on these two questions.
Can you repeat the second question?
The second question is there a high probability of having a hung assembly
Oh, yeah.
in this upcoming election?
Okay. I respond to the Mr. Shafiq Ismail. Sure, for me, this state election can be impact towards GE16 because every state election before this, there's become the national narrative. If the Chinese voters rejected Pakatan Harapan clearly in this election, so that narrative from the opposition in Peninsula will use this narrative to pressure Pakatan Harapan and Kerajaan Perpaduan in the next state election. We must remember after this is Malacca state election, Sarawak state election, and Johor state election will become. So that pressure will be major challenge for Pakatan Harapan and Kerajaan Perpaduan the next state election after this. For the Mr. Connie Lee, the majority of voters generally agrees from our study that no single party will surpass the 37 seat threshold. This means the government can only be formed through negotiation among parties that win a significant numbers of the seat. For example, if GRS score 25% and Warisan get 20 seat, 20 sorry. When if GRS win 25 seats and Warisan get 22 seats, Hajiji and Shafi'i will negotiate with other parties, including winning independent candidates, to form the government. The outcome will depend on leadership quality, diplomatic skill, and the distribution of government position. So for me, all small parties and independent in Sabah do not want to remain as a opposition. So that is the political reality in Sabah. If GRS succeed in forming the government, Warisan will remain in the opposition. If Warisan succeed, then GRS become the opposition. The first 24 hours after the announcement of result will be the most critical period in this election. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Hisom. I think it leads me to conclude this webinar. We hope you have enjoyed yourselves and found this useful. Please look out for our next webinar on 3rd December on Malaysia's role in the highly contested global semiconductor data center and rare earth value chain. I would like to thank Mr. Hisom and our audience for giving us your time. I would also like to thank David and our events colleague, Chong Chen and team for their support. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.